everyone, I'm Vishal Salsekar and today we are going to cover the News Today articles for 3rd April. So in today's discussion, we are going to cover three important articles in detail. The first one is regarding the India's defense exports. So as per the recent data, India is trying to become one of the major exporting country as far as the defense products are concerned. And we are observing that from last few years there has been rise of the India's defense export, and by 2029 we would want to ensure that more than 50,000 crore products are going to get exported from the perspective of defense. So that's why in context of Atmanirbhar Bharat, defense exports are very important. So we will talk about the aspect of Indian defense export. The next article we are going to cover regarding the 4 years of India Australia ECTA. Now, there are a lot of free trade agreement of late we have talked about, and in general also India has significantly signed a number of free trade agreements. Now, in different articles you might have already understood that what is the importance of the free trade agreement, but when we are going to talk about this article, this is regarding the assessment that the agreement has been signed. Now there has been 4 years. What is the progress of the free trade agreement? Has it actually led to the boosting of trade between these two countries? Were India's exports also increased to this particular country? So we will be talking about all these particular aspects. Next is regarding the citizen-centric governance. So from the perspective of technology, now the civil services also have to adopt certain technological aspect, and that is going to provide the good governance related initiatives, right? So we will talk about the citizen-centric governance. We will in detail talk about this particular thing. Then we will talk about the places in news and where we are going to talk about Indonesia. Then there are certain other important articles that we are talking about in. So let's start the discussion with the first article, which is regarding India's defense export, which has reached to all-time high of roughly 38,424 crore in financial year 2025-26, and this is the data of Ministry of Defense. Now, when we are talking about UPSC syllabus, we are already discussing a lot of article with respect to innovation, with respect to the energy independence, with respect to defense related manufacturing, right? So this is the article which is going to talk about the indigenization of technology. So indigenization of technology, developing the new technology, defense, security, all these things from the perspective of GS paper 3, it is a very important article. Apart from that, even from GS paper 2, because if India is going to export, there will be the countries who are going to purchase from India, right? And this is going to boost the trade relation between these two countries. Apart from trade, with respect to defense trade, and defense trade is going to boost the confidence of that particular country towards India. So it is going to boost the bilateral relation between India and the other country, and that's why it is going to be a important article from the GS paper 2 also. Now, talking about what are the recent achievement with respect to the defense related export, and before that with respect to the defense manufacturing. So this is one such predominant area, because previously we were discussing a lot of article where there have been discussion that India is a key importer. We are taking roughly 36% of the defense import from Russia, roughly 36% from France. Then there are certain other countries like US, like Israel, right? From where we are purchasing the defense equipment. Now, when India is developing its own equipment, along with that, India is now trying to become a major exporter of the defense related equipment, whether it is the deal regarding BrahMos or with respect to different other countries for the LCA Tejas also. So this is going to be very important aspect. So when we are talking about the export growth, so there has been the 62% approx export growth with respect to the defense products. Now, in roughly a few year ka time period, because 2021-22 and 2024-25 and now 25-26, we have the data available that roughly on an average basis there has been increase. And if there is an increase with respect to the exports of the defense related equipment, it is going to be a very important contribution for Make in India and the Atmanirbhar Bharat initiative. Apart from that, when we are talking about the sectoral contribution, so this tells about that which is the sector which are contributing, whether it is from the government sector or whether it is from the private industries. So generally the other countries में the private industries का contribution is comparatively high, but in the case of India still it is being dominated by the जो public sector undertakings, and they are dominating roughly 54%. But now the scenario is changing because the private sector is also catching up with the actual जो 50% वाला benchmark है to that, and the private sector contribution is roughly 45%. This is also one of the very important aspect from the perspective of the achievement in the defense export. Next, talking about the reach, because if you are exporting, you will be going towards the country is going to purchase the product from you, that will boost the bilateral trade, and that will ensure that the both countries relations are also going to be boosted, right? So there is 80 plus countries which have reached out to India or which are doing the trade with India regarding the defense related equipments. So it is 80 plus country. Now the target is like we have to reach to more and more number of countries, and we have to become the net exporter. So we have taken certain target for 2029, and we will try to reach to those particular target, and eventually we will try to ensure that the defense production, which should go roughly 3 lakh crore and 50,000 crore plus, should be the export by 2029. So these are certain things which are very, very important from the perspective of the defense. Now, talking about the significance, that what is the significance if India is going to become tomorrow the net exporter of the defense related equipment, or we will further boost the defense related equipments ka development and simultaneously the export, what is going to be benefit from this, right? So first is the strategic, because if India is going to become the export hub, first India have to become the manufacturing hub. If India wants to become the manufacturing hub, there has to be specific focus regarding the manufacturing, and that's why it is going to create India as a manufacturing hub of the defense related equipment. So obviously it is going to improve the economic scenario also in this particular regard, right? Next is the diplomatic stand. So when we are talking about the diplomatic aspect, so it is going to build the trust, because if suppose करो India is going to tomorrow export the defense product to any of the country, ऐसा तो नहीं है we are going to export it to the enemy country, so that they will be able to know our technology. So we will be trying to provide it to those particular countries with which India is having good relation. And this export is also going to be acting as a catalyst in order to boost the relation. Reason being simply that if India is exporting to certain country, it is going to build the trust. It is going to build the interoperability, and all these things are going to ensure the mutual relation between these two countries, between India and the other country to which we are exporting. Next is promoting the indigenization. So now if there has to be more production, that will be done in India, and that is going to boost the indigenization. So eventually it is going to lead the targets like the Atmanirbhar Bharat and Make in India initiatives with respect to the defense related equipments. Next is regarding the realizing of the Atmanirbhar Bharat goal. So as we have already discussed about that, roughly 50,000 crore we are trying to bring. So 50,000 crore export and roughly 3 lakh crore ke around we are trying to bring with respect to the development. And if we are going to achieve these particular target, this will be one of the prominent milestone with respect to the defense related development. Next, talking about the employment generation, it is also going to boost, because if there will be need for more production, there will be need for more human resources, there will be more capacity building needed, and eventually all these things are going to ensure the employment generation. Apart from that, even the increasing of the private sector participation, because right now you are seeing roughly 45%. Substantial, but less than 50%. Opportunities are comparatively more because private sector is working based upon the profit motive, and they are also going to bring the cutting edge technology if there is going to be boost with respect to the manufacturing and then export. So eventually all these things are going to boost in general the economy, and this is going to be benefit for the entire India and eventually to the India straight to the global countries, right? So that's why these are the significance with respect to the defense related export. Now talking about what are the issues, because ऐसा तो नहीं है कि the things are very very easy. There will be certain issues once we are trying to ensure, because see, for manufacturing there will be certain critical elements, apart from that rare earth elements are needed. In that particular case, suppose if the countries like China put the export ban or export control, then it will be difficult in order to ensure the complete supply chain, because in order to manufacture you need the supply of the certain type of inputs which are very very important for developing these type of defense technologies, and that's why that uninterrupted supply is very very important, and that's why we are doing the deals with different countries in order to ensure the supply chain. Now import dependence, because certain things which are needed in order to create certain type of products that will be based upon, जैसे fighter jets हो गए, ठीक है, magnets, permanent magnets, many of these things are imported, and that's why the issue is persisting that if we want to become a major export hub, first we have to ensure that removing of a dependency on these particular things has to be curtailed or entirely removed. Then global disruption vulnerability. Now, as I've already talked about, US President Trump comes, and then there are tariff issues. Then in retaliation, China puts the export control. So in these specific situation, eventually the chances are very, very high that the supply chain is not going to be smooth, and that will create certain difficulty. Next is competition from the global players. Now, aisa to nahi hai ki India is the only country which is exporting, right? There are already existing countries. There are the major countries like Russia, US is there, Israel is there, which is producing the cutting edge technology. There is France, there is Germany, right? So these particular countries are already doing the manufacturing, right? Now, if India have to compete, obviously it can't be done with the obsolete technology. So that's why there has to be the cutting edge technology, which is needed in general in order to be incorporated in the entire supply chain. And that is going to boost the India's aspect from the perspective of export. Then there are regulatory delays. Generally, see, whether it is private sector or whether it is government sector, the regulatory delays are one such predominant thing. Simple reason hai ki bhai, if there are more and more checks, if there are more and more licensing wala things that are required, that will boost the red tapeism. And once there is more red tapeism, the ease of doing business is going to be curtailed. And that's why the regulatory delays are also creating certain challenges. Now, talking about what initiatives India has taken, because already if we are boosting the manufacturing, boosting the export, then certain initiative we might have taken. So there are certain prominent initiatives. For example, there is Innovation for Defense Excellence Framework, IDEX, right? So this is regarding the putting up the innovation with respect to the defense manufacturing. Talking about the FDI liberalization, because if there is any foreign entity who want to invest in India with respect to this, so the FDI liberalization is also there. So now, as of now, we are providing 74% liberalization with respect to the foreign direct investment, specifically in the defense related sector. Now, in all these things, it is going to eventually boost the entire chain, bringing the funds from the foreign country and eventually utilizing those particular things for the defense manufacturing. Next is the defense acquisition procedure. So smoothening this particular procedure and also ensuring that there should be balance between the import and the export. Talking about the defense industrial corridor, which is going to boost the facilitation, which is going to boost the entire supply chain, which is going to provide the early procurement, the licensing wala things. All these things are going to be provided. That means the smoothing of the entire supply chain. Next is the research development and the innovation scheme, RDI scheme, right? So these are the predominant things which are very, very important from the perspective of the initiatives that India has taken in order to boost the manufacturing. Now, the challenges, if these are going to be removed, it is going to pave the way for a holistic development from the perspective of a comprehensive defense export, right? So these were regarding the defense export. Now the next article is regarding the assessment of India and Australia trade agreement. So it is economic cooperation and the trade agreement, ETCA, that was signed in 2022, and now in 2026 we are analyzing that what benefit we have got. So that was a type of free trade agreement where what India had done, India had provided liberalization with respect to roughly 90% of the volume of the products, and Australia in return provided 100% free trade with respect to all the things that are coming from India. So that's why, and that is going to be the principle, because when there is going to be a trade deal between two countries, one is developing, another is developed, it is going to be the developed country which is going to offer comparatively more concessions, right? So what India have gained, because eventually if you analyze that, is generally from the perspective of free trade agreement, it is India which is comparatively not able to utilize the free trade agreement properly. And that's where the difficulty comes, because eventually because of this particular thing, what happens that whenever there is a free trade agreement, it is mainly creating the deficit at the end of India, because the other countries' export to India increases, but simultaneously India's export to that particular country is not getting increased to that particular level. And that's why it is important. Now, from the perspective of GS paper 2, again IR bilateral agreement, and GS paper 3 economy, it is important article. Now, talking about what are the benefits that India have got, and this is the geography of Australia. We have already discussed in the places in news sometimes, and just have an idea regarding the geography of Australia once. Now, what are the benefits that India have got with respect to this particular agreement? So if we talk about India's export, so before this particular agreement, before 2022, the export of India to Australia was roughly $4 billion. After this, if we talk about the last year's data, it is roughly $8.5 billion. That means roughly it is more than doubled. So in last 4 years, there has been more than a double export, and not exactly 4 years, because this is the data of last year. Now, if you try and talk about the present year's data, till Feb, roughly there was 90 to 20 billion dollar ka entire trade, where the export are also competitive, right? So in that particular cases, you have to think from the perspective that it has led the boost of India's export to that particular country. Now, talking about the preferential market access, because India has also reduced the tariff line on roughly 90% of product, 90% of products, and 70.3% on the tariff lines, roughly 93%, 90% के around it is by volume, जो entire trade होता है उसका volume, right? While Australia granted the same on the 100% tariff line, means 100% product, 100% by the volume also of the trade, right? So that means the preferential market access, and this has ultimately resulted in rise of the export to Australia also, right? Then there is a broad-based sectoral gain. So if we talk about certain sectors which have gained predominantly, it is textile, pharmaceuticals, chemicals, agricultural product. Because see, generally when there is a developed country, the countries are mainly focusing, let's say, upon the manufacturing and all. So in the case of India, if India is going to supply the agricultural product where India is having competitive advantage, so India can provide that to that particular country, and that sector is going to get benefit. Similarly, textile sector, India is one of the predominant country. Pharmaceuticals, India is considered as the pharmacy of the world. So all these things are going to boost India's export to that particular country with which we are signing the free trade agreement. Next is regarding signing of the mutual recognition agreement. Now, mutual recognition agreement can be in many domains. It can be regarding services, it can be regarding any certification, it can be regarding the rules and the procedures, right? So here it is in the context of the organic sector. That means once there is an organic product, there is a certification attached to that. Once you are taking any organic product, उसपे certificate होता है ना, which says that yes, it is made up of this particular things, which is a part of the organic processes, right? So that's why this is organic sector के context में mutual recognition agreement. What does it says? That if India is certifying anything as the organic product, that similar certification will be valid in Australia also. There will not be any question. If there is no question, that means there will be no regulatory hurdle. Similarly, Australia, if certifies any product as the organic product, India will also take that particular thing as the certification of Australia, equivalent to the certification of India. Now, talking about what is the significance of Australia for India in general, because if there is going to be a question regarding the bilateral deals between India and Australia, we have to identify certain areas. The location of Australia is very, very important because it lies in the Pacific Ocean and it is bordering with the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. So if you see, the western part of Australia is touching the Indian Ocean, the eastern part is towards the Pacific Ocean. So eventually Australia is one of the predominant country which is lying at the pivot role or pivot region with respect to the Indo-Pacific. That's why with respect to security and safety of the Indo-Pacific, Australia is going to be one of the predominant country. Now, the significance talks can be divided into multiple parts. First is regarding the Indo-Pacific. So in order to ensure the safe, in order to ensure the law-based, in order to ensure open, all these type of Indo-Pacific can be gained if there is a presence in Australia, or if there is going to be a better relation between India and Australia. And that's why the transparent, open, secure, inclusive, rule-based order in the Indo-Pacific depends upon how Australia is going to react and how India and Australia are going to collaborate with each other. There is Quad, which is the quadrilateral dialogue, which includes the 4 countries, including India, Australia, Japan, and US. Now, that is also a pivot organization with respect to Indo-Pacific. Then there is Australia and India Indo-Pacific Ocean Initiative Partnership, right? So this is also India's and Australia's outlook towards Indo-Pacific. So there is a convergence between India and Australia towards the security related aspect in Indo-Pacific. Then there is 2+2 dialogue framework. Now this particular 2+2 dialogue framework includes the minister which is coming from the external affairs and the defense. So there is going to be collaboration on the strategic aspect. So this all things are available from the perspective of India and Australia relation. Now talking about the defense engagement, there is AUSINDEX, which is Australia and India related maritime exercise, because maritime collaboration is very, very important because both countries are not sharing the land boundary, but they are sharing the maritime boundary. Then there is Mutual Logistics Supports Agreement 2021. Now, Like you might have already heard regarding Limoa Logistics Exchange Memorandum of Agreement with US, which provides the access to each other's bases for the logistical purposes. Just suppose karo, if India's vehicle is moving in the Indian Ocean region, if there is a need for refueling, if there is some type of issues with respect to that particular vehicle, that vehicle can be docked in Australia, that can be provided with support by the Australian bases. So this is the mutual logistics supports agreement. Apart from that, energy and resource, because both the countries are having vast ocean line or vast coastal line, and that's why the new supply chains that are very, very important. The energy, renewable energy, very, very important. For the critical minerals, the partnership is very, very important, because Australia is one of the predominant, जो we can say, the region जहां पर there are rare earth element, critical mineral, and that's why the partnership has also been signed between India and Australia regarding critical mineral investment partnership. Similarly, India and Australia are also dealing with the third countries. In this particular case, it is Canada also, which is for the critical mineral related partnership. So all these things are important from the perspective of India and Australia partnership. Now, the anchor region over here is the Indo-Pacific. Also, apart from that, green hydrogen. So as I've already talked about, there are new and renewable energy. Apart from that, ocean-based energy. Many of the places where India and Australia are collaborating in order to ensure the benefit for the humanity, right? So these are the importance or significance of Australia for India. Next article is regarding the Prime Minister emphasizing upon the deeply citizen-centric model. So basically, if the governance has to be improved, it has to be citizen-centric. And citizen-centric does not mean that the initiative only are going to be targeted towards them. Citizen also have to be made as a stakeholder. Means the citizen se bina puche, obviously you are not going to do. If the benefit has to be provided, then the citizens needs have to be understood first, and eventually then you are going to deliver that what exactly those people are in the need of. And that's why the citizen-centric governance model needs and keeps the citizen at the center of that particular model. And that's why it is important article. Now, from the perspective of syllabus GS paper 2, so from that perspective, governance, transparency and accountability, it is an important topic. And from the perspective of GS paper 4, citizen-centric administration in the ethics paper, it is a very important topic. So that's why this is a important article from the perspective of governance also, and from the perspective of ethics also. Now, what is the exactly context that there has been recently the Karma Yogi Sadhana Saptah 2026, where it coincided with the Capacity Building Commission. Now, this Capacity Building Commission was formed under Mission Karma Yogi in 2021. So, this particular commission was built in 2021. Now, as the name suggests, Capacity Building Commission is there for capacity building. So, those who are the administrator for their training, for their competency with respect to the changing scenario in the context of technology and other, there is going to be the Capacity Building Commission, which is formed under Mission Karma Yogi. Now, what exactly is Mission Karma Yogi? So, Mission Karma Yogi is a training and capacity building program for the civil servants. Now, this particular program talks about that what all the areas with respect to the reforms which are needed for the civil servants, those particular areas have to be emphasized, and there have to be capacity building, retraining of the civil servants, right? So, these are important aspects from the perspective of governance, right? Now, talking about what exactly citizen-centric governance. So, as I've already talked about, that citizen-centric governance is not merely talking about the schemes and all. It is talking about the citizen should be the very important or the prime stakeholder at the center in order to ensure that whatever is going on, that is based upon the citizens' needs, right? So, offering citizens welfare and satisfaction to provide good governance, obviously it is going to be the basic premise. Then it is linked with the good governance and puts the citizen at the core of the good governance. That's what I was talking about. Now, larger role to the citizen. That means citizens should be there in the decision making. Citizens should be there with respect to that what exactly are their needs and how those particular needs have to be substantiated, provided with support. Now, what are the prerequisites for the citizen-centric governance? Now, these are certain prerequisites. There should be sound legal framework. That means there has to be the legal mechanism available in order to provide the support. Next is the robust constitutional mechanism for implementation of law. Now, if there is a law, if that law is not able to be provided because of certain hindrances, that law is not utilizable, right? So, there is a need for providing the proper institutional mechanism for the implementation. Means the implementing authority should be clearly provided and the power has to be clearly vested with competent personal staff. Now, it's even if it has to be provided properly, we will need the competent staff. Now those particular staffs are the individual who are going to actually implement. Just say there might be traffic rules, but ultimately the onus lies on those particular people who are on the mainly at the cross junctions, who are implementing those particular laws. If that will not be done properly, then it is going to be a issue. Last is the right policies towards the decentralization, delegation and accountability. Means aisa nahi hai ki one individual can do all the things. That's why there have to be proper delegation, there have to be proper decentralization, and this is going to ensure the comprehensive development, right? Now, for this, what are the initiatives that have been taken? So certain initiatives were already taken with respect to improving of the governance, and these can be provided with whenever there is any question regarding the improvement of the governance or making governance more citizen centric. Now the first is the Sevottam model. So this is the model early 2000 mein, roughly in 2006 this particular model was talked about, and this was conceived in 2006 Department of Administrative Reforms and Public Grievances, DARPG. Under which ministry? Ministry of Personal, Public Grievances and Pension. So this can be a prelims related fact that you can have an idea about. Next is decentralization. So already we have done with the 73rd and 74th Constitutional Amendment Act. That has also been extended to the tribal regions through the 5th schedule wala provisions, and that was done through the Panchayat extension to scheduled areas. That social audits are also incorporated in that, right? So all these things are talking about the decentralization. Now the next is the maximum governance and minimum government. Means the intervention should be minimum, but at the same point of time facilitation has to be provided properly. That's why the ease of doing business reform, rehauling of the obsolete laws, e-governance initiative, DigiLocker, Umang app, all these things are talking about that how we can ensure that whatever are the laws, those particular laws should be properly implemented. And when I'm saying properly implemented, that means the checks and balances also has to be there, but there should be a clear mechanism in order to ensure the accountability of those particular people. Next is Right to Information Act. So if there are any provision and still they are not being implemented properly, Right to Information Act ensures that those things are going to be implemented properly. And lastly, the computerized public grievance redressal and monitoring system, which is CP-GRAM. Again, it is regarding taking the grievances, understanding them and properly providing the resolution to those particular grievances. So this is regarding ensuring that the governance ultimately reaches to the last person who is actually the major stakeholder with respect to that particular governance initiative. So the next is the places in news, and in today's places in news, it is Indonesia. The capital city is Jakarta. Now, if you see the geography of Indonesia, it is the island country, right? You are seeing different set of island. The most predominant island is the Sumatra one, and Sumatra ke bare mein UPSC had already asked the question that which of the following island I think is most closest to the Indian territory, right? So Sumatra, then there is Java, which is the major region which is population wise more dense. Apart from that, the political capital also, because Jakarta is situated over here. Then you are able to see over here on the Borneo island, this is the Kalimantan region, right? So this is the Borneo region. Apart from that, there is Sulawesi also, and then there is Papua on, which is having the border with the Papua New Guinea. So these are the predominant island. Now I would give you a homework that just try to identify that which all are the strait or the important strait with respect to this, because the straits ke bare mein bhi UPSC can ask the question. So this is your homework. Just try to identify, and this is the mapping related work. Now talking about that, why we are talking about Indonesia. So there has been a massive earthquake, 7.4 earthquake aaya hai, and that's why we are talking about the Indonesia, right? Now the boundaries that we have already talked about, so it is lying at the cross junction between the Indian Ocean and the Pacific. Like similarly we have talked about Australia, that Indian and the Pacific Ocean, here also Indian and the Pacific Ocean, and these are the island chains which is lying over there. Now one such important fact regarding this, that it is also lying on the Pacific Ring of Fire. Now if you observe, this region is the Pacific Ring of Fire, and this is earthquake wise, volcanism wise, these are very much prone region. And along with that, obviously if these events are going to occur in the ocean region, it might trigger the tsunami also. That's why this particular Pacific Ring of Fire, which is a concept which is formed by the converging and the diverging plates, it is an important type of plate boundary, right? Now its boundaries, if we talk about the countries, it is sharing the boundary with Malaysia over the Borneo island. Then there is Papua New Guinea, there is East Timor. These are the countries with which Indonesia is having border. Now Apart from that maritime border, it is also having with the Australia and the other countries also, right? So it is sharing the land border with East Timor, Papua New Guinea, and then there is Malaysia. Now, talking about the it was also one of the predominant country after independence, because after independence, Indonesia was basically one of the country along with India, which was a propounder for non-aligned movement, and Bandung, which was a region in Indonesia, was considered as one of the precursor to the formation of non-aligned movement. Now, talking about tectonic setting, Pacific Ring of Fire, which is one of the prominent fact regarding this. Volcanism, it is again, since it is on the Pacific Ring of Fire, a mainly converging type of plate, jahan par there is rise of a lot of volcanic eruption, along with that the earthquake. That's why it is a earthquake prone zone and volcanism related zone. So Mount Merapi is there, which is on the Java. Mount Krakatoa is there, right? So these are the prominent volcanoes, and then it is lying very near to the equator, and that's why this is having the tropical type of climate, right? So that, and you will not observe any of the extremes in general. Now, having discussed about Indonesia, now let's talk about certain other articles briefly. Now, the first in this is the Arab League. Now, what we have to talk about regarding this particular body, but what exactly is the context? So there has been Arab League ka emergency session in the Cairo, which is the city in Egypt, and over the Al-Aqsa closure and the prisoners execution law. That's why this particular article we are talking about. Now, it is an intergovernmental organization. If it is a league, that means it is including multiple countries, and when the multiple countries are collaborating, generally in order to strengthen the cooperation, in order to provide the mutual benefits, these are going to be the advantages. So it is an intergovernmental organization encompassing all the Arab states in the Middle East and North Africa. So if there is a question talking about that it is only including the Arab state in the Middle Eastern region, no, it is also including the North Africa. Again, since Iran is right now in the conflict, they can also ask you that Iran is a prominent member, but it is not. Iran is not a member of the Arab League. Now, strengthening the coordination, strengthening relations, coordination among the policies, cooperation while safeguarding the independence and sovereignty. So this particular organization is in order to ensure the cooperation between different countries, so that they should be able to provide the comprehensive framework for the governance. At the same point of time, not intervening in the internal affairs. Established kab hua? 1945, March 22, 1945, for the adoption of the Alexandria Protocol of 1944. So once World War II was about to end, there were a lot of cooperative bodies or cooperation bodies that were getting established. One of the prominent body was the Arab League. Now the headquarters is in Cairo, Egypt. Founding members include Egypt, Iraq. Iraq is a member, Iran is not a member. Lebanon, Saudi Arabia, Syria, Jordan, and Yemen. Right now there are 22 members. They can ask you regarding India, they can ask you regarding Pakistan, they can ask you regarding this. So just have an idea regarding that which of the following country are member of Arab League. Next is the non-deliverable derivatives, right? So non-deliverable derivatives, NDD. Now, what is exactly the non-deliverable derivative? So non-deliverable means there is going to be derivative which is deriving its value from certain things, and in this particular case, it is the currency and the currency exchange. So this is a type of future contract for the currency related pricing. So suppose there is one currency, rupee and dollar, and this contract is for the currency exchange rate between the rupee and dollar. So in this particular thing, it is a non-deliverable. Non-deliverable means actual thing is not going to be exchanged. It is what the difference between that, like the present value or future value ke beech ka jo difference rahega, what is going to be the difference, that is only going to be transacted. And in which form it is going to be transacted? It is going to be transacted in the form of cash, and cash specifically the dollar. So as you can assume that it is a type of informal type ka mechanism which is beyond the country's national banks. So the Reserve Bank of India has directed to bar the banks from the NDD contracts in rupee. That means you can't do it in the rupee. Now, derivative contract is where the two parties agreed on the future exchange rate of rupee, but settle the difference in the cash, usually in the US dollar. So settle the difference is the important keyword. That means it's not the entire transaction is going to be settled. It is only the difference. That means only jitna exchange mein change hoga, that particular thing is going to be exchanged, and that too in the US dollar. Now, why this particular thing is taking place? Because in response to the restriction that constrain the access to the onshore market and are widely used by the foreign investors, hedge fund and the global banks. Now, the trade takes place offshore outside the control of RBI. That means ऐसा नहीं कि this is a formal mechanism, this is a type of informal type का mechanism, and that's why it is settled in the cash. ठीक है. Next is the National Council for Education, Research and Training, NCERT, which all of you eventually are going to read, or you might be reading also, right? So the government has declared that NCERT is a deemed university. Deemed or the deemed to be university means it is going to be in future, it will be a university. But with the deemed to be university or deemed university, it is now allowed to give the degrees or issue the degrees and certificates also. So it is going to enjoy all the academic status privileges of a university. Then it is declared by the central government on the advice of UGC. Where is the headquarter? That's why the NCERT is important, and NCERT was previously also important from the perspective of an chapter that was incorporated in NCERT regarding the judiciary, right? So that's why NCERT is very important. Headquarter है New Delhi में, right? Autonomous organization set up in 1961. Objective क्या है? You all know that the curriculum related books and materials are being published by NCERT. So the research, training, development, all these things are being done. Now Ministry of Education के अंदर आता है, and then it is a nodal agency to develop the national curriculum frameworks for early childhood care and education. For early childhood care and education, the school education and the adult education. So these are the areas where the NCERT is working, right? Next is regarding Article 161. So Article 161, Article 72, these are the provisions are dealing with the powers of governor and the president. So 72 is with respect to president, 161 is with respect to the governor, which provides them power to pardon, respite, remit, right? All these type of sentences. Now, in the case of president, it can be done for anything, okay? But in the case of governor, it is only pertaining to the state laws. Okay. So there are certain differences with respect to that. Also go and check that what are the differentiation with respect to the powers to the president in the context of martial law. In the case of martial law, president can remit or pardon that particular martial law, or he cannot. Okay. So just have an idea about that. Go to the books and check. And if there is comment section, do comment regarding that, whether president can pardon regarding the martial law or any of the verdict of the martial law courts or not. So Madras High Court had recently held that the governor must follow the cabinet advice while exercising power under Article 161 of the Constitution, and that's why this particular Article 161 is important. It is granting power to the governors to grant pardon, reprieve, respite, remission of the punishment, or to suspend, remit or commute the sentence. Means he has exactly similar power, but in the context of the state's law, जो states के executive jurisdiction में आता है, that only, right? So that's why it is Article 161, which is dealing with the powers of president. It is the pardoning power of governor, sorry. It is for the governor, and this is the pardoning power of governor. Similarly, 72 is for the pardoning power of the President of India. Next is the Purchasing Managers Index. So the indexes, whenever there is any index, just have an idea about that, what exactly that particular index convey. This is CPIF for the inflation related thing. Wholesale Price Index, WPI for the inflation, again in the wholesale context. Similarly, this is the Purchasing Managers Index, which talks about regarding the economy, whether it is expanding or whether it is shrinking. If it is above 50 and it is increasing, that is expanding economy. If it is going below 50, that means the contracting economy, and that is basically based upon the output of the economy. Now recently there is war going on, so in the war case there are going to be limitation with respect to the economic development, and then it is bound to reduce, right? So this has happened. So HSBC India manufacturing PMI fell to 53.9 in March. So economy is still expanding, but it has reduced. Roughly it is the 4-year low due to the West Asian crisis. Now, it is the new orders and output for the manufacturing firm rose at the slowest rate. They are rising, but at the slowest rate. Means it is economy in the expanding mode, but at a slow pace, right? Now, it is survey based on the indicator, measuring the business conditions using the data on the order, output, employment. Means on the output factors, it is assessing. If it is above 50, expansion. If it is below 50, it is the contraction of the economy. So manufacturing PMI and service PMI दोनों तरीके के होते हैं, because the output can be in both the cases, right? So it reflects the vulnerability on the manufacturing. So if it is decreasing, and suppose karo tomorrow it decrease further less than 50, then in that case we can say that economy is contracting. They can ask you that 50 ke above ka PMI represents what. So you have to have an idea regarding this. Next is the Taragiri. So INS Taragiri is a Nilgiri class frigate which is commissioned today. So frigate are basically the type of warship which is loaded with a lot of type of equipments including the missiles, and this is the fast moving vessel in the water. So it is INS Taragiri. It is a Nilgiri class frigate. Now it is fourth of the 7 multi-mission stealth guided missile frigate which is part of the Project 17 Alpha. Now there are certain type of prominent projects. This is Scorpion class submarine के लिए है for this also. So just have an idea regarding, if there is anything in the news, just have an idea regarding that. Now it is combined diesel or the gas propulsion plant. So how it is getting power? So it is getting power through the diesel or gas. Now it is designed for the high speed, high endurance. Means it can move very swiftly. It can move very, very fastly in the water, and that is going to provide an agile nature to this type of frigate, versatility and the multi-dimensional maritime operation. Now it is a multi-role warfare machine. So supersonic surface to surface missile, medium range surface to air missile, specialized anti-submarine warfare suit. So it is loaded with all the type of machinery and the weaponry which is needed for the combat role, right? Now in this, it is one of the indigenously developed. So 70% के around जो content है, that is indigenously developed content, and that is built by the Mazgaon Dockyard Limited, Mumbai, right? Next is, and this is the last article, which is the multi-hazard early warning decision support system. So India's multi-hazard early warning decision support system marks the digital transformation in forecasting, strengthening disaster risk reduction and preparedness. That means जो multi-hazard early warning system है, that is going to provide you the early warning, that is going to predict certain type of hazards and going to give you early warning so that you can be prepared accordingly, so that you will be having an idea that if there is going to be any type of hazard, you should be already prepared regarding that. So it is going to increase the availability and the access to the multi-hazard early warning system to people by 2030, जो कि एक गोल था Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction. So Sendai framework is pertaining to the disaster risk reduction. Now it is also having the web GIS, which is the GIS based digital platform. Now GIS based digital platform is going to provide you the information regarding the land, that how it is going to improve the access to the information with respect to where the parameters are changing and where we can have a better idea regarding how this particular platform is going to help our data, our information with respect to the potential hazard. Now it is developed by IMD under the Mission Mausam initiative. Now what are the achievements? So what it has basically provided, coverage for 80% ke around people, means majority of the hazard prone area have already been covered. So whether it is earthquake, whether it is tsunami, whether it is any other type of things, or the impact of climate change, that you can incorporate. Accurate forecast. So it had already provided accurate forecast for the Biparjoy and the cyclone Dana. So if you are already aware, you can quickly move the people so that the casualties can be reduced. Automation. So 90% ke around weather data collection is automated, and that is going to help with respect to the swift responses. Lastly, it has received the national award for e-governance. That means it is, though it is the multi-hazard early warning system, but it is also a part of e-governance, because e-governance also talks about the citizen-centric governance, and there are these particular things which are also part of this, right? So that's why it is a comprehensive set of development. Now with this, we have completed the news today discussion for 3rd April. I hope that whatever we have discussed is clear to you. We'll meet sometime again in the another set of discussion. Thank you everyone. Have a great day.